Hello and welcome to another weekly update. And it's going to be a super short one this week, um, partly because it's been a busy week and so I don't want to go on too long. And also because there's no internet at home at the moment. Something has happened. If you're in the UK, you'll know all about BT and the way that yeah the internet in the UK. If you're not, BT are the national carrier. They kind of have a bit of a monopoly over the broadband network here, or at least their other company, Openreach, do. So when it goes wrong, it can be a little frustrating sometimes to get it put right. Anyway, we have an engineer coming tomorrow, all of which means there's no internet here, which is annoying for things like this because it's going to be a hassle to try and upload it. It's 101 things you don't think about, like Dropbox syncing. So what I tend to do during the week is pick up things that I think are interesting so I can talk about them today, and I put them into Dropbox. So normally I'd sync that with my computer, but of course I can't. And then I'm kind of into home automation and as well. So what that means is that like none of the lights work properly, the doorbell doesn't work, I can't listen to music from anywhere. So yeah, it's a first world problem for sure, but it kind of just derives home actually how reliant we're becoming on the internet as a service, and more I feel like we should treat it, and government and utility companies should treat it as an essential service in the way they treat water and electricity. If my electricity had been cut off or my water had been cut off for 24 hours by now, um, the response would have been very different to that of my internet being cut off. Anyway, um, earlier this week I put out a blog post about Microsoft Teams. So I refer to my phone for my notes, so apologies for that. So Microsoft Teams and the API access to that via Graph. Now it's still in beta, so we can expect it to change and get better. But excitingly, you can do quite a few things today already in Graph. And if you've never looked at Graph, then if you're a developer and you've never looked at Graph, you absolutely should. It's a fantastic resource for Office 365 developers. Really good HTTP based kind of stateless RESTful architecture for talking to lots of different 365 services. What makes it good is that they're all accessed in the same way, the same format and style, and it's the same authentication mechanism. So once you've authenticated once, you don't have to re-authenticate just to use all these different services. There's also a really good, it's called Graph Explorer. It's a web page you can go to, and you can really just explore these APIs, walk through them, and just drag, like clicking with a nice UI, explore the different calls and see what they look like and see what type of data gets returned as well. So that's really good for just working out what calls you need to make. And there's support for doing things in Teams as well. So you can create channels in Teams. You can create teams as well. It's slightly more complicated because they're a type of group, but certainly if you want to create channels within a team, that's relatively easy. Listing teams, listing channels is very easy, and sending messages into channels is also very easy. It's kind of bizarre, and it's interesting to see how they're building out these APIs sort of demand by demand rather than all at once. So for instance, you can send a message into a channel, but you can't read messages from a channel or delete messages in a channel yet. Now, I'm sure you're going to be able to. It's just they did the create one first because that presumably unlocks a bunch of functionality that probably something like the connectors use. Under the hood, they probably use the same API calls. So kind of interesting to see that evolution. And it's great that we're getting early access to it. Microsoft aren't waiting until it's 100% polished. They're giving it to us nice and early so we can also kind of take advantage of that as well. So that's kind of interesting. If you're a 365 developer, if you're doing development on Teams and you want an automated way of creating channels and looking and listing channels, and seeing what's happening in channels and stuff like that, then this might be right up your street. It might be useful and might help you kind of solve a particular business problem today. So that was interesting. A couple of other things, nothing major really. I also wanted to talk about other than we've got the news today. So we have Microsoft's earnings report today for it's kind of Q4 earnings report, and this was the first time, I guess it had to happen at some point, but this is the first time that Office 365 license revenue exceeded more traditional on-premise license revenue. And that's kind of interesting. Again, it had to happen at some point, I guess, but it just kind of drives home that message that Microsoft are really moving to the cloud and moving people over to 365. And it's interesting to see license revenue. I'm not sure how much. I suppose the cynic would say that it's more a factor of falling on-premise license revenue than it is growing 365 license revenue. I'm not sure that's entirely true, but it's probably a little bit of a mixture of both. Anyway, I'm going to keep this nice and short because it means that the file size is short, and that means the upload time on 3 and 4G is very short. So have a great week. Hopefully I shall be back fully online in the next couple of days. In the meantime, have a great weekend, and I will talk to you next week.